reality, and it's a genuine and tragic reality. In every country that has slid from democracy into authoritarianism, autocracy, fascism, whatever you want to call it, lost democracy, with a few small exceptions. For example, in Chile, it was overnight because Nixon and the CIA, launched basically a coup against the elected president at the time, and Pinochet ended up, coming in and taking over. But Allende was the president. But in Hungary, it wasn't until May of 2020 that people in Hungary really realized that they had lost their democracy. That was when Viktor Orban started arresting people for posting things about him on Facebook. For people in Russia, it was when Alexei Navalny stood up and started getting very popular, and he was poisoned, and then his supporters started getting arrested, and a couple of oligarchs who supported him were thrown out of windows. That's when Russians realized, we're not in Kansas anymore here. For Germans, it was July 14th, 1933. This is just 6 months after Hitler became chancellor, when he outlawed all political parties except for his own, except for the Nazis. At first, the steps from democracy to tyranny typically seem like, just another thing the government has to do to deal with a very real problem, right? Immigration, it's a very real problem. What do we do about it? And, that's how, but then the mask is dropped and the twisted face of fascism starts staring out with a bloody mouth filled with threats and lies, wearing camouflage, a masked face, and carrying handcuffs. We're there. Trump and his neo-fascist enablers started with quiet cat's feet, and now they're holding a rifle and using a bullhorn. How do we know that Trump's doing something very different from America's past, something that inevitably leads to something other than democracy? Well, let's just take a look at immigration, the current excuse that Trump is using to militarize the United States. During the first 3 months of President Obama's administration, he deported 63,257 people. 63,000 people in Obama's first 3 months. Trump's first 3 months, he deported 61,060 people. So Trump has deported fewer people than Obama did. But why is, given that simple reality that Obama deported more people than Trump did, why is it that Trump's getting all the headlines? And why is it that Trump is getting all the protesters with his arrests? Well, the reason pretty straightforward is because Trump's whole immigration thing, his whole deportation thing, has nothing to do with illegals. Instead, it's about making Americans comfortable with authoritarian police state tactics. The immigrants are just props, albeit ones that appeal to the racist MAGA base. Obama deported people based on what were called Morton memos. They were also called enforcement priority memos, which required ICE to focus entirely on those undocumented aliens who posed either national security or criminal threats to America. The people who were arrested and turned back at the border didn't have due process because they were stopped at the border. But the people Obama targeted within the United States were all detained after warrants were issued based on probable cause because they'd committed a crime or they were believed to be a threat to America, as the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution and law require. And each had their day in law where they could claim that they'd been arrested and held without legal justification. Obama started Operation Crosscheck, organizing coordinated raids across the country, targeting aliens with established criminal records. Each arrest required proper documentation or warrants. He also operated his immigration enforcement efforts equally well in red states as in blue states. The Biden administration largely did the same thing as Obama did. Court hearings, due process, enforcement priorities. But under Trump, it's been a completely different show. A show designed to freak people out, to get America ready for the military in the streets. Again, this has very little to do with immigration. This has to do with getting us used to having our own military point guns at us. You know, why is Trump having federal police carry out high-profile raids in schools, hospitals, workplaces, and courthouses, rather than just showing up at people's homes after hours like Obama and Biden did? Why is he showing up with essentially SWAT teams? Obama and Biden would have, you know, two cops show up at somebody's house and say, you know, Jose, sorry, you got to come with us. Why is our Secretary of Homeland Security dressing up like an immigration agent to cosplay for the cameras? And why are her videos being plastered all over the internet, all over the media, social media? Why is Trump giving highly political, banana-style Republic speeches, or Banana Republic-style speeches, to active duty military, calling out or attacking the previous president and the governor of California with lies and partisan slurs? I mean, being apolitical before our military is a tradition that goes back to George Washington. And why isn't the media more outraged and freaked out about this? If Obama had attacked George W. Bush in a speech to the military, we wouldn't hear the end of that for a year. The reason Trump is doing all these things is because it's not really about undocumented aliens or deportations. This is all fascism theater designed specifically and intentionally to get us ready to accept what's next. First, they turn their guns and their violations of cultural and legal norms on the weakest and most misunderstood or even hated people in a society. For Hitler, that was trans people and immigrants. For Mussolini, it was labor leaders and immigrants. For Putin, it was rebelling Chechens and immigrants. For Orban, it was the Roma people and immigrants. In each case, regular citizens quickly got used to police kicking in other people's doors without warrants, throwing undesirables in prison without attorneys or court proceedings, and having masked, out-of-uniform officers dragging folks off the streets without identification or justification. After all, it was only them who were being targeted. At the same time, each of these regimes began extensive intelligence gathering operations to identify actual or even potential dissidents and ways that they could be broken, whether through exposing secrets like homosexuality or affairs, by bankrupting them with libel suits for speaking out against the administration, or even outright arrest on trumped-up sedition charges. Think Doge's pimply-paced incels downloading every single bit of data the government has ever had on you and aggregating it into a massive database that this administration can use against you when the time comes. Next, wannabe dictators always open detention facilities with the realization or rationalization that they're just for those people. And then, of course, throughout history, the regime's police, paramilitary, and finally the military itself turn their guns and their new prisons on us, on the regular people who are just speaking up or speaking out. This is the final stage. We're at the beginning of the final stage. This is what journalist Milton Mayer warned about. This, you know, we're far down this road. And the question is, are we like the Germans, like the Hungarians, like the Italians, Russians, Turks, Egyptians, so many others? Are we going to wait until the repression is so obvious it's undeniable and unstoppable? The choice, at least so far, is still ours. Show up on Saturday. I'll be right back with you.